Hello everybody, and welcome to this week's Easy 11 Plus live lesson. It's a question and answer session this week because I've been very busy with other things, and we'll keep this fairly short. So please start putting your questions in the comments, and I will do my best to answer them. In the meantime, don't forget that there are various links in the video description, including some freebies that you might want to check out, and these live lessons which normally are based on a topic and have a work. What have we got here? Someone says worksheet is not printable, the link is not working. Sorry about that. There isn't a worksheet for this lesson. It's a Q&A session. I'll get rid of that link from the video description later on. What have we got here? Lots of people saying very nice things, but no questions. So let's start off with some really common questions until the questions start filtering through in the comments here. So lots of people want to know, what is my main advice for preparing for the 11 plus? And you'll find I have nothing to say here that I haven't said before, because there are a few main bits of advice that I keep on giving. So perhaps the most important thing is to learn really good systems for your work. So that means when you turn up in the exam, even if you're feeling a bit off that day, ill and you didn't sleep well, you can still sit down in the exam and just do the things that you practice. So for example, with comprehension, it's about having a really good system of looking at the question, circling the key question words like what, how, explain, quotations, evidence, that kind of thing. It's about looking at the number of marks available and deducing what sort of structure might be required for your answer. And then it's about thinking, right, how can I put this together really concisely in a direct answer to the question? If you have systems like that, you can just do them whenever there's a difficult question in front of you. It's the same with all sorts of different question types. Then you can just reproduce them without too much stress. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, when you feel stuck in an exam, because we all feel stuck sometimes, just remember to start by writing what you know. So if you've got a maths question and you think, I don't know what to do with this, start off by saying, right, what is in the question? What are the key bits of information? Just put those things down and then start playing with some ideas of what you might do with them. And that way you might well start to see things clearly and head towards the answer. But even if you don't, you may well have done enough to get some marks for that question. So these are perhaps the most important things that I keep saying to people again and again and again. Rima wants to know, how long does the test take? Oh no, someone started with a question that I can't, depends on the exam. There are lots of different 11 plus exam styles from different independent schools, from boards like the GL, the CEM, the CSSE, and all sorts of other letter sets. And they have different exam lengths. So I'm afraid it just depends. Sometimes you'll have a comprehension exam, a writing exam, a maths exam, maybe also a reasoning exam might go on for hours, and sometimes it'll be relatively short and concise and you'll be there and done within a couple of hours of exams. It does just depend. Someone says, do you prefer Bond? I think they mean Bond books, which are common 11 plus preparation materials. They certainly have their use. It's a really good way to get lots and lots and lots of questions. The advantage is really there's a really wide range of stuff, and they're quite cheap and they're easy to get hold of. I think the disadvantages are that they don't quite reach the difficulty level for some of the more challenging schools, and that by and large they don't give very thorough answers. So if you're really stuck on something, often Bond books don't really talk you through how to do it. Mary Day Dawson wants to know, what school does non-verbal reasoning? Loads of schools do non-verbal reasoning. Sorry, I can't really give you a list. Someone says the video quality isn't that good. Yeah, I've turned down the latency for this video so I can see your comments without a 30-second delay, but that might have some effect on the quality, I'm afraid. Someone says these are very good strategies. Thank you. How do you improve your speed for the 11 plus, says Marsh. When should we practice speed? Okay, that's a really good question. So to answer the first part, how do you improve your speed? Well, The main thing not to do is just to put tighter and tighter time limits on your practice papers and try and work faster and faster. Because if you do that, you'll hit your limit pretty quickly, and that limit might not be fast enough. Because what will happen then is the same mistaken approaches and reinforce them. What's much more useful is actually to improve your speed by slowing down. So take the time to say, right, what are the things in this practice paper that I've just done, get a bit stuck, that made me go more slowly? And then take those things and really slowly and carefully, without a thought of timing, work on them until you're confident with them. And then take them back into your practice papers and do the work untimed. And then see how you do, and keep going through that process. So taking out the things that cause you problems, that cause slowness, work on them slowly and carefully until you're really confident and you've got good systems, going back to what I said earlier on, and then start thinking about the timing. And the second part of your question was, when should I be working on timing? Well, mostly quite near to the exam. I wouldn't do too much timed work until your exam is at most 2 months away. But it's good to occasionally do a bit of time practice before then, just so you have an idea of what it's right. Gaming TV says, any classical literature books you recommend? I mean, there are loads that I could, but I think that the best approach is to think about what your interests are in what you read that isn't classical, and then try and follow those interests. So if you like spy stories, then look for some older spy novels and read those. If you like romantic stories, find older romantic stories and read those, and so on. And then in turn, when you've read those older books, then you might find some authors that you like, and you might read things that they've written about different subject areas. And so you'll expand that way. So I think following your interests is a really good way to go into it. And you can find out books related to your interests easily by using the internet, which I'm sure you're all excellent with. But please don't post the same questions loads of times, because they just hide other people's questions. What is the best grammar school? In a way, that's an unanswerable question. You could just name the grammar school that came top of last year's league table or something, if I even could remember which one that was. But that doesn't necessarily make it the best school anyway. Some schools have fantastic exam results because they take in the brightest children at the beginning in year 7. So it's no wonder they do really well when it comes to GCSEs and A-levels. The best school is the school that takes somebody like you and helps them to achieve the most for themselves and to be happy. A lot of that's to do with going to the visiting schools, finding somewhere where you really feel at home, where you like the atmosphere, where you feel that yes, they can offer something to you, but also you can offer something to them. And that in practice will be the best school for you, and that's worth a lot more than exam league tables are. Ashok says, how to build a vocabulary. So building vocabulary is really important. Some people can learn lists of words, and that's a really good way to do it for them, but I don't think that's most people. I think the best way to build your vocabulary is when you come across interesting new words in your reading. New words or words that you just don't really use. Write them down and then start to use them. Use them in your conversation, use them in your own writing, and so learn words practically through applying them. And that way they'll stick. The thing to say is, yes, vocabulary building is important, but I think it's actually much more important to learn to use the words that you already know really well. You know thousands of words. If you didn't, you wouldn't be watching this video. You know thousands and thousands of words. And if you get used to choosing the best word from all the words that you know when you have a writing task, you'll find that you can do a huge amount with 4 verbal reasoning exams, which again, it's a good thing to do, it's important. However, even if you've got a fantastic vocabulary, you will almost certainly encounter words in a verbal reasoning exam that you don't know. And so you still have to be able to work out how to deal with unfamiliar words. And that's the case anyway, and that's one of the key skills. It's probably the key skill for learning to do verbal reasoning, VR, well. And so therefore, yes, do learn new words, and learn new words by using them in most cases, but also practice using the words that you do know really well, and practice dealing logically with unfamiliar words, working out what they might mean, getting rid of other options that can't be right, and working through, rationally, logically to get the most likely answer. Because you'll need to do that anyway. What to do when not feeling good during exams. It's happened to all of us at some point. It certainly happened to me. I think that goes back to what I said at the beginning, actually. So the better you practice so that you've got really good systems for all the likely kinds of question, the less your performance will depend on how you're feeling on the day. If you're sort of flying by the seat of your pants all the time and you rely on feeling really inspired and brilliant if you're going to do well in a test or a task, you're going to come unstuck sometimes. And so just be systematic, make sure all your knowledge, all your skills are really deeply ingrained, really at the heart of you, and then you'll do better in those circumstances. The other thing I'd say is this is a really good reason not just to apply to one or two schools. Because yes, it can be a bit stressful, but it takes the pressure off. It means that if you have one bad day, you can go, hey ho, not the end of the world, because I've got another chance somewhere else next week. And I often encourage people to apply to as many schools as they can, largely for that reason. What score do you need to get to pass the 11 plus for CEM? It depends on the school. It just depends on how competitive that particular school is. So some schools will set the level higher and some lower. There's no absolute answer to that. Should you learn the Alexandra? I have no idea what that means. What is the best amount of time to study for? That could mean how long in terms of months before the exam, or it could mean how much time should you be studying each day. I'll try and answer both. So the main thing to say is it depends on, you're going to have to work this out for yourself. Nobody can tell you must study for this amount of time, except your parents if they tell you should do it. But in terms of how long before the exams you should study for, well, you should be studying one way or another, and certainly once you're at school, everything you're learning in terms of your English skills, your math skills, your problem-solving skills, all that's very relevant. So in that sense, you should always be trying to make your core skills really good so that when it does come to 11 plus preparation, you're in a good place. If you mean when should you start practicing with practice paper, is often about a year and a half before the exams, a year to a year and a half before the exams. And for most people, that's going to mean end of year 4, beginning of year 5. Beginning of year 5 is a really common, many gaps in what you know anyway, and it'll get frustrating. Ashok says he went to Christ Hospital. Ashok, you know my life. Is 11 plus harder or A-level or GCSE? GCSE is harder than 11 plus, and A-level is harder than GCSE, basically. There are some exceptions to this. So some GCSE exams involve knowing quite a lot, but they aren't necessarily that difficult. I think it's true of some subjects, whereas some 11 plus tests require you to be really smart, really turned on, and very creative. So you could argue that some 11 plus exams are harder than some GCSE exams in some ways, but by and large, GCSE is harder than 11 plus and A-level is harder than GCSE. I'm sorry I'm missing lots of questions. The reason I'm missing lots of questions is mainly because some people, not looking at you, Tony Cotton, are posting the same question loads of times, which means the comments are flying past and I'm missing lots of questions. And people saying, what are some books you recommend? I've already answered that question in my way. Which books are best for 11 plus? My books, of course, are best for 11 plus, and you can find them linked in the video description. Okay, I had to say that. If you don't do that well in creative writing but do well in the exam, could you still get a bursary? This is a question from Outernet. I think there's some things mixed up here. So the first thing to say is a bursary is not dependent normally. A bursary is money that the school gives to support families who might struggle to pay for their school fees for a private school. And so the school supports them with money, and that's not normally based on exam performance. You have to do well enough to get into the school, and then if the question is just what are your financial needs? I think what you're thinking about is not normally amounts of money that are going to make the difference between being able to go to the school and not being able to go to the school. It's more a nice thing to have that makes you feel good and gives a little bit of financial help to your parents. If you don't do that well in creative writing but do well in the exam, you mean do well in the other exams, I guess. Well, it depends what you mean. I mean, if you do really well in the other parts of the exam, perhaps your overall mark will still be good enough. But of course, it's hard to get a really outstanding overall mark if you haven't done well in one area or other. I think that's kind of obvious. I can't really say much more than that on that point. People still asking questions that I've already answered, like how long should you study for? What school did you go to? Already answered that. Well, somebody said it and I commented on it. Should I? Well, you should care about SATs because any exam is an opportunity for you to get your skills and your knowledge nicely lined up, so that then you can take those skills and that knowledge into the next thing that you do, which might be 11 plus. And if you don't bother to prepare for SATs and you totally flunk it, then you've damaged your general academic performance and your 11 plus preparation and so on. If you mean, do SATs really matter? Will they have any big effect on your... Robert is my favourite YouTuber, says Wilton W. Thank you. I'm really touched. Tony, reading books you recommend. I've already answered. I've talked about following your interests and how you might find reading books that interest you and so on. If you mean specific recommendations, not for classic books, for books that you might read now, there are loads of really good reading lists out there. Just Google them. If I just named some books now, first of all, I'm not really an expert on books for people your age. Secondly, it would just be a recommendation of something I like, and it wouldn't say anything about what you like. Okay, a fantastic book for young people that I read last week, as you've insisted, is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman, which I thought was an absolutely beautiful book, just absolutely wonderful. So read that and think about it as you read it. Okay, I've answered your question. Stop asking it. How would you tackle comprehension questions worth about 8 to 10 marks? This is from Babsy. Okay. I think the best thing is probably just to send you to the many videos I've done on this sort of topic. In fact, last week's session was on personality questions, and one of the questions there was, I think, worth 8 marks. That's the video where I'm standing there pulling faces at a mongoose on the cover, if you can find it that way. Look at that, and there are lots of other videos on comprehension I've got that deal with the same issue. The most important thing, okay, I will say a couple of things because why not? It's important. One thing is you really need to think carefully about how you're going to structure your answer before you write it. Often a long question like this, it's going to be a points and evidence question, and if it's worth 8 marks, that's likely to mean 4 points with evidence, but it does depend on the question. Have that kind of thought process and work out exactly how you're going to get those marks. One thing that's peculiarly difficult about long questions like this, when you have to write about a text, is that it can be challenging to find different things to say. So let's say you need 4 points for the marks. Because one of the most common mistakes is people making points that aren't really that different from each other, so they lose marks that way. Really good stuff. People asking about scores for particular grammar schools. I don't know enough for creative writing. Whoa, massive question. See my videos on creative writing. See my books for creative writing. They're called RSL Creative Writing. Links in the video description. But in general terms, writing. Just get used to writing and do lots of reading as well. And just doing reading and writing, but doing it thoughtfully. So not just churning out stories that are just a load of rubbish without thinking about. But yeah, look at my videos, look at my books, and that'll give you a really good start. If you really want my help with creative writing, if you look at 11 Plus Lifeline, I do offer a service there where you can actually send me your work and I send back my detailed feedback on it. There's nothing wrong with enjoying any books that you enjoy, but they might be a little bit young for your age. I don't know how much there will be in there to really get you thinking about texts and learning from them, but I could be wrong. I'm not going to go on for too much longer, by the way, because I'm super busy, and that's why I've done this question and answer rather than doing a topic-based lesson. So I'm just going to take, maybe 2 or 3 more questions, and then we'll call it a day. So a nice short one this time, and you can get off to your dinner or whatever lovely thing you have waiting for you. Would you recommend grammar school for a student with ADHD, and are there any time allowances for people with this disorder? Whether there are any time allowances for ADHD, I simply don't know. You'd need to ask someone more specialist than me. But with any question like this, the easiest thing is usually to ask the school and find out from them, or the local education authority, or whoever is in charge of the exam system. Would I recommend a grammar school for someone with ADHD? Absolutely. Place for you. If it is, then I think ADHD shouldn't be an obstacle. Also, if you have a special educational need like that, it's something that in your life you're going to need to learn to accommodate and to take advantage of when it helps you, but also to fit around the requirements of society and jobs and study and all these things. And so grammar school might be a fantastic place to, learn those skills, and I'm sure you'd have a lot to offer there. I have a creative writing exam tomorrow. What tips do you recommend? I would actually click away from this video and go to my creative writing videos and watch those, and that's where you'll get for creative writing. Alex says, OMG, I am reading the Graveyard Book. I hope you're enjoying it. I think it's a fantastic book. Ashok says, your videos are the best and I recommended you to my best friend. Thank you so much. Very much appreciated. In an exam, should you start with the higher mark questions or just go normally? I would by and large go from the beginning to the end. The exam will be structured usually so that you get your maths brain in gear, working through core skills questions, and then they develop into more challenging, more thought-provoking questions. And so it's good to follow that route because you'll be in the best mood when you get to them. In a comprehension exam, through the shorter questions so that when you come to the longer questions, you're well placed to tackle them. So I would usually do the questions in order, but do make sure that you leave enough time for the longer, more challenging questions. What have you got here? Loads of people putting the same question again and again, so I'm struggling to find the other. Why do people not listen to me? Stop doing this. Post your question once or twice at most, please. What type of creative writing do you usually do in an 11 plus English test? Oh, it really depends on the school. But I mean, certainly the most common things would include continuing a story. So let's say you've done a comprehension task and then the next thing is carry the story on. Another really common one is a descriptive or story task based on a picture. That's really, really common. And then sort of classic, write about a time when you blah, 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 write about a journey, that kind of thing. These are really, really common kinds of tasks, but other things can turn up. What do you do if you're stuck on a question? This is from Thomas, because of time. Okay, two things I would say here. One, if you're stuck on a question and there are other questions that you haven't done, then you might be best just ditching it and getting something down for those questions where you'll maybe be less stuck and you'll get more things down in the minute or two left, and get more marks that way. If this is the last question, if you've done everything you can with the others, then when you've got 2-3 minutes left in the exam, just write stuff down. Just get your ideas on the paper. Even in this situation, use bullet points if you have to. Just get as many ideas down as possible, even if they aren't completely coherent. Mark questions. You're running out of time. Don't think, help, I don't know how to get 8 or 10 marks. Think, right, what can I scribble down quickly that might get me 4 marks? And then that might make the difference between passing and failing the exam. If you fail, could you still get in again? No, probably not for that school. Obviously, you can often appeal the exam result if you think that for some reason it's unfair or there's some circumstance in your life that explains it. So I suppose in that way you could. But if you don't pass the 11 plus, could you get in later, maybe school? I don't really know the answer to this, but in general, I think if you'd already not passed the 11 plus, they probably wouldn't be that interested in you. They'd probably look at other people who hadn't sat for the exam for them. I could be wrong. Maybe it's worth a try. Maybe later on, in terms of getting into sixth form, for example, yes, I mean, I very much doubt they'd look at your 11 plus results and hold it against you by that point. So I guess it does depend. What is your favourite food? Good question. It really depends. Probably avocados, which is, some people say it's not necessarily the most environmentally friendly option. Avocados. I also love halloumi cheese. So yeah, I suppose if I was just going to pig out at home, I might have maybe some toast with avocado. Right, we're pulling towards the end here. He says, I have a headache. I'm very sorry to hear it. Drink lots of water. Maybe you're dehydrated. But perhaps stop watching this screen and have a lie down. Thank you. My NVR has got so much better since watching your vids, says Fiona. Brilliant. For anyone who doesn't know, by the way, if you go onto my YouTube channel, so look for the Easy 11 Plus channel on YouTube, not just the individual videos are categorized by topic. So there's a section on comprehension, a section on math, section on creative writing, section on reasoning, there's a section on question and answer like this, all sorts of things like that. So if you want to look at something like NVR, go to my channel and find the playlist, find the section for that particular topic. Just a tip in case you didn't know. How do you do speed, distance and time? I did a video on speed, distance and time about a month ago. It's on my channel. Look in either the maths playlist or the Easy 11 Plus Shorts playlist, because as you may know, I do my live videos every Tuesday evening, and I also once or twice a week publish a short sitting in a little red cartoon car with a funny hat waving. So you'll spot it that way. Okay, right. Been lovely to talk to you. Thank you for your wonderful questions. Yeah, I'll see you back next Tuesday evening for a topic-based question. Someone asked me today whether I could cover how to start a story, and I think that's a really good topic, so I'll probably work on that with you. So look out for the worksheet. If each live lesson, then what you need to do is you need to go into the video description underneath the video on YouTube, or it's above it on Facebook. Click the link where it says free papers and solution live lesson a few days before it happens, so you can practice in advance. Right, okay, that will do for today. Please subscribe to my channel. Thank you for being here. Tell your friends about it and enjoy your dinner. Bye-bye.